Alright, excuse my mess. This is my whole setup for these shoes that I'm working on. I am doing these Minecraft design for a customer, and I'm going to show you how I set up to do this. And they liked the design so much that they decided that they did not want laces and asked if I could make the shoes slip-ons. So let's see if you can see it in there. I sewed on some elastic. It's hard to tell if I'm getting that on camera. Well, you can see I have a piece here and a piece here. It was really hard. It was easy to sew it to the tongue, but it was more difficult to sew it to the inside. I did use this is my favorite adhesive. It's called Super Fabric Adhesive, and it works extremely well, and it is also flexible, so it's really great for using on shoes and stuff. But I put the adhesive down here on the bottom, and I also sewed around it to give it a little bit more extra strength. And in order to sew it, which I will show you how I did that later on, but I use a curved needle, and I also had to enlist the help of some needle nose pliers to get in there and really pull it through, because it's difficult to get a grip on it when you're trying to go through just the top edge of the sock liner without going all the way through the shoe, and it's just really hard to grip it. So basically, this is the finished design here, and it's for a 6-year-old, so there is a number 6 on there. As you can see, it's Minecraft, and I did put a satin finisher on this, but then I'm going to go over it with a matte finisher as well. I like to do that because sometimes just putting the matte finisher on it will it'll cause it, like in the creases, when they walk and stuff, it'll cause it to make the creases kind of a chalky line that won't really go away. And I have found that if I use the satin finisher first before I do the matte finisher, it kind of takes care of that. But here's the other shoe, and I start off on the top. As you can see, I just took a pencil and I just eyeballed it and freehand a grid, and in order to make it match this one that I also just eyeballed, I started at the toe to make sure that the little face guy is going to end up basically in the same location. So I started with the grid, counted my lines here, made sure I had the same here, and then I just put a little dot on where my black ones are going to be, just so that I know, and I took the grid all the way up. When I move to the sides, I will draw the grid on at that time, but I just like to work on one area at a time. So here we go with that. And I do have some paint that I already have mixed up some colors, but it looks like some of it has dried out and I will have to mix some more. But basically I work with one color at a time, and I just take that one color, and let's add some water to that. I just work with one color. How many times am I going to say that? And I just randomly pick and choose where I want those squares at. There's no rhyme or reason for it. It's better if it's random with all of the colors. so that it doesn't look too mapped out. And basically, I'll just put what I feel like is enough, you know, several squares here and there and everywhere, and then I'll move on to another color. And then once I get towards the end, if I feel like I need to go back to a color and fill in a couple squares, then I will do that. But it's easier to work with one color at a time because you're going to need to more than likely do 2 or possibly 3 coats sometimes to make sure that you have a nice even coverage. And it's easier when you're just working with one color to see which color is which. So once I get like several colors on here, if I'm trying to work with, you know, 6 or 7 different colors, I'm gonna forget because the colors are so similar, which one was actually that color. So that's why I just work with one color at a time. And so I'm just going to do that. I'll probably cut the camera and just turn it on periodically, but I'm pretty sure you don't need to sit here and watch me paint every single square, because it is time consuming. Even if I sped up the footage, it's pretty straightforward. I just want this to be a pretty easy video just to kind of get the idea of how it's done and how you can do it as well. Because it may seem like a fairly simple design, which it is, but simplicity can also be very complicated. You need to make sure that everything is really on point when you're going with a simple design. Because a complex design can hide little flaws, whereas a simplistic design will show every single flaw. And of course, being hand painted, there are going to be some flaws, but you want it to be as close to perfect as you possibly can. So yeah, I guess I'm just going to cut the camera and I will come back when I move on to a different color or something that I feel like is important to point out. Otherwise, it's fairly simple and straightforward. So yeah, there we go. Oh, and you know what? One thing that I did forget to mention is that I already pre-prepped the shoes, which I do with every single pair that I do. You want to, if they're not brand new shoes, you want to make sure to clean them really well, but when they are brand new, you skip to the second step, which is just the deglazing. You can get a deglazer such as from Angelus, but you could also just use acetone or alcohol. They both work well and are a very inexpensive, more affordable option to the actual leather preparer deglazer. And then after that step, the next step that I always do, which you don't have to, but I like to do it just to make sure that the paint stays as well as it can. I want my designs to be long lasting. And so I always spray them with an adhesion promoter just to help give the paint a little grip. Because even though you deglaze it, it's still a slick surface, and so giving it something to grip just really overall helps your final product. And then after that is when you start out your design. And this one, more complicated designs, I tend to do a mock-up in Procreate, but with this one it was just pretty straightforward, and so there was no need for a mock-up. I just go straight into eyeballing, drawing the design. I didn't even use a ruler, nothing. I just sketched it out straight onto the shoe. So I'll be back later with another update. See you then. So first off, I want to apologize for the really crappy camera work right here. I was trying to hold the camera with one hand and show my technique with the other hand, and that was very difficult in making sure that I kept the camera still. And yeah, so I apologize if this makes you dizzy, because it does get a little bit worse than it is right now. But you can see where I do end up getting it on camera, how I am using the needle nose pliers to pull that needle through, and I'm using a curved needle. And as I said before earlier in the video, that I did also use that super fabric adhesive from Aleene's. It's my favorite adhesive, and it will help to keep that in place just in case a stitch comes undone or something. And I actually did this shoe backwards, in that I attached it to the tongue first and then I tried to attach it to the side, and I learned my lesson that was very difficult. And so for the second shoe, I switched it up and I attached it on the side first and then went with the tongue. So this is what it looks like after the elastic is completely attached on both sides, and it works really well, and I'm sure the child is going to like having slip-on shoes instead of laces. And now we go right into me showing these resin squares that I made to cover up the lace holes, just for a better overall silhouette. And then I just attached them to the shoe, and here is the final product. It turned out really well. I absolutely love the resin squares over the lace holes. I think it gave it just that extra touch, just to push it up over the edge. And the writing is a special request from the customer. It is something that has to do with Pakistan. So this is it. This is the final product.